The slow boil in many countries in the Western world is now witnessing a pot full of freedoms evaporating into the proverbial ether. While countries like Sweden and Canada are racing toward the bottom, the UK, not to be outdone, has made some pretty stellar examples of its government's disdain for the free flow of ideas as well as a person's right for freedom of speech and conscience. And for all intents and purposes, the authorities are not even trying to hide their disproportionate use of force, custodial sentences, and the unleashing of the establishment on those it means to silence. And for the purposes of this video, we will be examining the UK and its descent into an anarcho-tyranny state. Anarcho-tyranny is a concept used in critiquing modern social democracy. Samuel Francis argued that the problems of managerial states extend to issues of crime and justice. In 1992, he introduced the word anarcho-tyranny, and he wants to find it this way. We refuse to control real criminals. That's the anarchy, so we control the innocent. That's the tyranny. Or to put it another way, in the UK, the country's authorities have created a social climate of anarchy. That's when they fail to enforce the laws equally, while at the same time, when it does enforce existing laws, it does so for oppressive purposes, which is the tyranny. And it does this via the criminalization of the law-abiding population. This is accomplished via exorbitant taxation, the invasion of privacy, bureaucratic regulations, the engineering of the social institutions such as local schools and families, but most importantly, with the forced imposition of thought control via multiculturalist curricula, sensitivity training, gun control laws that are used to disarm otherwise law-abiding citizens while having no impact on violent criminals who can get their guns from the black market sources, and most importantly, the nebulous and ever-used concept of hate crime laws. Reading from the London Metropolitan Police website, it becomes clear that, at least in the UK, an entire class of laws is meant to keep a lid on the social tensions that were in fact created by the policies enacted by the political class. These laws are stated to be in place to protect people from, quote-unquote, being offended. To quote directly, a hate crime is defined as any criminal offense which is perceived by the victim or any person to be motivated by hostility or prejudice. Evidence of a hate element is not a requirement. You do not need to personally perceive the incident to be hate-related. It would be enough if another person, a witness, or even a police officer thought the incident was hate-related. Clear examples of this you can see in regards to the gross overreach by authorities in the UK in just the past week with the debacle of Mark Meacham, or Count Dankula as he's known on his YouTube channel, and he has been dragged through the courts for 2 years for teaching his girlfriend's pug in a prank video to salute on command as well as other offensive utterances. When making the decision to convict Count Dankula, the presiding judge obviously implied that context and intent were irrelevant. Thus, witness the tyranny. And these kinds of cases are unfortunately very common in the UK. To compare and contrast, there are countless gangs marauding all across the country, Telford being the latest grisly example of an estimated 1 million young girls that have been affected by forced enrichment. For decades, the police, social services, local councils, and the media have all conspired to silence girls for the sake of community cohesion. In fact, Labour MP and key Corbyn ally Naz Shah even shared a Twitter message telling Rotherham victims to, quote-unquote, shut their mouths for the good of diversity. Rotherham is the infamous northern town that will forever be linked to the vibrant enrichment forced upon its native British population, so much so that its former Labour MP Sarah Champion described these now common intercultural exchanges in the UK between Pakistani men and white children as a national disaster. And for her trouble, she was forced to resign because she pointed out the obvious, which cannot go without punishment in an anarcho-tyranny state. Now, compare and contrast the reaction of the authorities to the countless diabolical crimes spanning decades, which in fact they tried to hide, and the reaction by those same authorities against citizens that speak out in reaction to the horrors that were created by the political class. It is these people, rather than the former, that are met with maniacal enforcement and state oppression. In fact, officials in Rotherham moved to ban protests against their own incompetence as they appealed to the Home Secretary for emergency special powers under the Public Order Act of 1986. Now witness thus the state-created anarchy. Tyranny must be enforced to stop the law-abiding from commenting on the anarchy aided and abetted by the state. Think also on the massive amount of time and money spent on keeping people from being offended on social media in the UK. Just this past week, in a tweet from the official Scotland Police Twitter feed, they warn potential thought criminals with, "You may think online you're anonymous. You can create fake profiles and no one can trace you. That's wrong. The messages you type and send can be traced back to you. The same laws apply to online messages, images, and videos. What you post now can affect you later in life." This is all pretty standard stuff, and in fact, 9 people a day on average, or more than 3,300 per year, are being arrested in the UK for posting allegedly offensive messages online, as the police forces on that island step up their campaign to combat trolling on social media, with arrests for offensive Facebook and Twitter posts soaring in London. Thus, tyranny is executed under Section 127 of the Communications Act of 2003, which makes it illegal to intentionally cause annoyance, inconvenience, or needless anxiety to another. Making sure people are not offended by others speaking out is the national priority of authorities in the UK, not tackling the underlying problems that create the thought criminals themselves. In fact, consider this. Why is the government so intent on stopping people from speaking out and controlling the human emotion of profound dislike for something? Again, it is the criminalization to prevent the law-abiding to be at odds with or speak out against the circumstances that the political class has imposed upon the population without their consent. Thus, you will see more and more and more suppression of people and their ability to speak freely, as well as the state's abusing of its authority to clamp down on thought criminals like Tommy Robinson, for example. The result of anarcho-tyranny is that the government swells in power, criminals and their ilk are not controlled, and law-abiding citizens wind up being repressed by the state and attacked by thugs with impunity. Former West German Chancellor Helmut Schmidt said all the way back in 1990 that political freedoms rely on shared political culture as much as on oppositions and balances that social differentiation creates, and when the common culture disintegrates under the impact of mass migrations, only institutionalized force can hold the regime together. And as we can readily see, force used against the law-abiding only is a tactic used throughout the Western world and the UK in particular. In terms of solutions, first and foremost, what is needed in the UK and every other Western nation for that matter, save the US, are new laws that unequivocally guarantee free speech, no matter the amount of offense that may be, could be, or perhaps be had. When you can't even reasonably or rationally talk about the problems that plague your society, real solutions to the anarcho-tyranny state created by the ruling class to punish the law-abiding for speaking out upon their own dispossession will never be found. And when coming full circle with words to take heed, Francis argued that anarcho-tyranny, which is built into the managerial system, cannot be solved by simply fighting corruption or voting out incumbents. In fact, he says that the system generates a false conservatism that encourages people to act passively in the face of perpetual revolution. He concludes that only by devolving power back toward law-abiding citizens can sanity be restored. As always, thanks for watching. If you like this kind of material, please consider subscribing. Also, follow me on the usual social media, and till next time.